Hey everyone, welcome back to Navajo Tea Time. So, just a quick recap. Adrian had to jump off, and so me and Josh continued our conversation, and this is just the rest of that interview. Enjoy! I guess going back, I guess more to like the traditional stuff of like, do you ever try planting traditional vegetation from the area, like yucca, Navajo tea? I know my grandma used to talk about like wild onions that kind of grow out in like the sandier areas.
Hmm.
Have you ever tried replanting some of those, like kind of in a way to like harvest, like you would like a tomato or a mint?
Yeah, I've gone out into the wilderness, and collected seeds. Not too far from my road, there's a ditch, and that's where it's sandy, and that's where water will collect after it comes off the road, and that's pretty much what Navajo tea prefers is sandy, fast draining soil, but also rain. Um, I banana yucca, those grow around this way towards Crown Point. I've collected seeds and planted them, but they grow so freaking slow. Um, I think in 5 years I'll have something like this big. Yeah, so I have gone out and around where I live, and you'll see like old yucca patches. Like you have the mother plant, but then you have a lot of little babies around it, and sometimes they're really overcrowded. They're competing for water, for resources. So I would went out and I would lop off some of those babies, dig them up, and bring them back to my home. On the east east side of my house, no, the west side, I have a small cactus garden. It's all yucca and other cactuses that were just kind of out and around, and I just put them in my garden, and they're growing. They're doing pretty well. As far as like when you're talking about your wild onions, it reminds me of my stepdad. He was talking about he was in Shiprock near the river. Wild asparagus used to grow. The wild onions used to grow too, and like those types, those are what we used to eat. Our people back then, wild onions, wild asparagus, wild parsley. Um, there's a term thrown around called food desert, which a lot of people classify the reservation as. But a lady told me, she's like, not even. There's so much food all around us, but we have no clue what's edible, what isn't edible. Like not until I was told about these types of food out there and I could identify them, I can go on a hike, in the mountains, the mesas around Crumpet, and I can see these parsley and stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, I never knew that this was something we could eat. My knowledge on those kind of local wild foods is I'm still learning more from other people, but I want to try more of those types of foods. At the Hojon Center, that big cove we're situated in, I'm designing a big circular trail in that cove. And my goal is to make that a big food forest, bring in these wild asparagus, wild onions, parsley, everything else, plants that are edible that we used to survive on back in the day. And I want to start cultivating them and planting them in the cove. So when people come visit, not only can they see the awesome market gardens, but when you go into the cove, into another separate area outside the fencing, it'll just be a food forest of all of our indigenous foods that we used to survive on. Um, that's kind of my another big goal that we want to accomplish. So here at my house, I'm not going to focus too much on that type, but definitely at the Hajjon Center, we will do as many as a native plants as we can. And this kind of almost segues into in addition to indigenous foods, growing a lot of foods, teaching the community, wool. We're going to do land restoration. So erosion was bad this last year, spring. There was so much blowing dust. The topsoil is blowing away. And the biggest reason is people say overgrazing from like livestock. Also, which is true, I believe. But with the overgrazing, like cows and horses, they rip the whole plant out of the ground. There's no roots left in the soil. And once you no longer have living roots in the soil, that's when erosion starts happening. When the rain wins, that's when all your topsoil blows away. Um, like the best way to combat that is keep living roots in the soil. So at the Hajon Center, we're going to be bringing back the Navajo churro sheep. We'll be getting 20 this spring with one llama, and we're going to start them grazing in the pasture across on the other side of the road from the center. Um, sheep are the churro sheep are the best type of animal for our climate. They don't pull the plant out of the ground; they mow it, so they leave living roots in the soil. So we're going to be using the churro sheep to start working the land, and then follow behind them. Following behind them, we're going to start reseeding with native grass seeds, and start planting all these native plants that used to thrive here, but have been kind of pushed out of the way in lieu of more invasive varieties. I found out sagebrush is very invasive. It's not really natural to our area. Apparently there used to be grasslands and prairies out here, but sagebrush has really taken over in a lot of areas. I love sagebrush. It's beautiful. It smells great, but I didn't know that it crowded out our native grasslands. So through the with the sheep, we'll be doing land restoration, reseeding, and we'll be doing, it's called swales. I don't know if you've ever heard of a swale. How you can basically, it's like a long ditch almost, like 6 inches deep, and when water comes it's going to fill it, and then it's going to drain out, and then it's going to fill the next swale below it. So it's a way to slow down water, but also you keep water on the land. That way it could recharge the aquifer. But in the swales we'll be planting more native trees, and the perennials and grasses, shrubs in front of the swales, behind it. So as the rains come, um, the water will stay in the swale, and it'll start watering all these plants. And once you can get them established, they can start growing. It's like a set it and forget it. They'll take over, and that's kind of a big way we're going to start healing the land and reestablishing native vegetation.
When you say that, I kind of think of like I don't know, like the little reels or TikToks or whatever of like people running around the city with like sprinklers of like wildflower seeds.
Yes, I love those. It was like a salt shake, pepper shaker. Like they
Yeah.
do that. I think California, Oakland, beautiful. Or they do those seed bombs. Like they throw them over the fence into an area, and then like there's flowers in a month. I'm like, that's beautiful, and what a thing to do. And I think it's not our responsibility, but our duty. Like this is what we used to do back in the day. Indigenous people, we were stewards of the land. We knew we worked the land, but we didn't work it too much. It's not fatigued. We knew how much we could take and what we couldn't do. That's why we did crop rotation. You fallow your fields to let them rest. And not only that, but we also, not only did we grow food for ourselves, but we also grew it for everything else living. Your birds, your rabbits, squirrels, insects, everything's alive out there. And if you're coming into an area and you want to grow food, well, go for it. But it's not just you living there. There's a lot of other living beings there. So it's kind of doing all this, what we're trying to accomplish, it's all ties in together. And we're literally just kind of going back on the old ways that we used to do. And we're getting there, but there's already communities around the country. um, you know Anglos are doing it in Taos. They've been doing it for decades, and people are permaculture, they call it, no till gardening, all these buzzwords for it. But it's looking at it, it's what indigenous people, what we used to do back in the day. And this kind of almost reminds me of something. I think I was told this about how there's going to be a point in the world where things are going to get bad, where people are going to have to turn back to the old indigenous ways, and it's going to be like us that are going to help progress society forward and help everyone else. I feel like that's kind of starting to ring true more now, especially with our land, our food. Um, Large scale agriculture, it's the land is fatigued, it's exhausted, and they're trying to get as much production out of the land as they can. But now with no-till gardening, dry farming, we're gonna have to step up and start doing that ourselves, because eventually there's not going to be enough food to go around for everyone. And I think now is the time that we need to start taking control of our food system, and start growing locally. Small scale families, communities like NHA group housing, and the tribe as whole get food systems in place, because what COVID showed us was when this supply chain was disrupted, like everyone suffered. And it's if we don't want it to happen again, we're going to have to take control of our food system and get something established for now and for the latter generations.
Yeah, for sure. I think I was in like a gardening group, and one of the things that it said is like, if the critters around aren't eating your food, then you're not a part of the ecosystem. So like if like animals and bugs aren't trying to eat your food, then you're not growing food that's indigenous or beneficial to the area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I've never heard that, but that does make sense. Like I this when I was living in Gallup, the I don't think the squirrels ate my eggplant, but they sure went for the pumpkins. You can see their two little teeth in there. But yeah, that makes sense. I totally agree.
How accurate do you feel like some of the gardening zones are of like, oh, you're in zone 7A, so this is when you should plant? And I always felt like it wasn't right specifically for Cameron. I'm like, yeah, I'm like an hour away from Flagstaff. Are we in the same zone or not? Or like half an hour from Tuba, they definitely get more rain
Mhm.
than we do, and we're like probably 10 degrees hotter than Tuba.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Um, I understand what you're saying. Those are the USDA hardiness zones. I think they go from like 1 to 13, based on how what determines your number is how cold it can get over winter. So where I live, I'm classified as zone 6A. It can get between -20 to -30 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter. Not this year, but like 8 years ago, it got -28. Insane. But that's what that number represents. So I know Tuba, where my friends live, they're zone 7. They're like 7B, almost 8. So the higher the number, the not as cold as it gets. As far as how reliable they are, you take it with a grain of salt, especially here in the Southwest. You can get 4 seasons in one day. Like it snowed one time on June 2nd here.
mhm,
We had a week of 70 degrees in February. So locals know that our weather is very wonky and unpredictable, especially in the spring. So it can tell you to plant, now in early May, but that, hey, it could snow in a week or two, wet then. So, take it with a grain of salt. They're on the right track, but it's not like reliable like if you live in like Florida, New Jersey, Midwest, but it's just more harder to deal with here in the Southwest. But I tend to agree with it. And when you think about planting zones, like your whole yard may not be zone 7. There's little things that people don't know. They're called microclimates. Have you heard of a microclimate?
yeah.
Yeah, so you can have your south side of your home. It could be a half a number higher versus the north side, half a number lower. So, you just can't put a blanket zone on your whole yard. There's little microclimates you have to take into account. But I trust it. But yeah.
I always like look at like the weather map, and I'm like, where's Cameron? It's the place where there are no clouds.
Yeah. So how that works is you're on the drier side of the mountain range. How it works is when moisture is moving over through the atmosphere, it's cooler higher up. So if you have a mountain in the way, as the air moves up, it's cooler, it's going to condense, so it's going to fall on that side of the mountain. But as it moves over, all the moisture is gone, so it's
Mhm.
just dry. So that's exactly you have, what is it, the Coconino forest?
Mhm.
Green as can green as be, but as soon as you go past it towards Cameron, Tuba, it is dry. Same with me. I'm on this side of the mountain range. It's green on Theroux, Grant, but you go towards over the mountains to Farmington, it is just so dry.
I think one time like I saw like there was like a fire in Grand Canyon, and I saw the smoke, and it looked like it was coming towards us, but it literally went all the way around. I'm like, "Oh, that's the way the clouds travel." So we don't get the smoke, but we don't get the rain either.
Yeah. I gotta. I got to check out Cameron's geography. That's interesting. How
Like I said,
what
like
happens here?
there's like a weird barometric pressure drop where like the clouds just go away and
Yeah, they part and then they go around
it's
and
a
they
weather dome.
I'm sure that's a thing. I think I don't know. Yeah, I'll look it up after this. I'm curious now. I just know I don't know Western agency that well. I'm all Eastern,
No, I get
all things.
it. So I guess we've already talked a lot about like the Hojo Center and like what you plan for it and everything, but like how is it creating it? Like um I don't know, just like what are your experiences or is it
I think I remember this one reading this. Let me see. Well, it's I love it, but it's a lot of work. When I first got there, I think I have a video I posted. It was so hot and there was so many flies and there was beer cans, broken glass, trash, and the previous caretakers, they didn't take very good care of the property. They were there for 19 years, and this one rule stipulation was, hey, you can live here, but just please take care of the property. And they didn't do so, and just trash piling up. A lot of the buildings fell into disrepair. There's 7 structures on site, but a lot more, like 4 of them are not salvageable at all. They're crumbling. So starting working there and trying to assess what say salvageable, what isn't, and if it is, how much is it going to cost to renovate these stone buildings from the 30s? That I think it was established in 1928, and it went through 2 families, and then it ended with the Smouse family, and they were the longest owners recently. And the property went under the Hajon Center last year, so it's under the foundation, or not the foundation, the nonprofit now. Um, it was just me by myself out there, and buying shovels and just getting to work, doing what I need to do. And my employers, the foundation, the higher ups, the board, they're like, what do you guys want? And we want this, we want this. Okay, but like, you want indigenous foods, but like, how? Like, how do you want me to do this? I was very nervous and hesitant to start modeling it. And from my, like, the first day I got to tour the site before I jumped on board, I saw everything. I saw the vision. I saw gardens. I saw orchards. I saw a fountain, a koi pond, a spot for a Japanese maple. Everything I saw, I was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be amazing. But as I started working and like start planting the gardens, I was like, what do they want? What do they want? And finally, the chairman of the board was out there visiting, and I really asked her. I was like, I don't know how to proceed. I don't want to make any mistakes. How do you want your gardens to be designed? And she just grabbed me by the shoulders and she just told me, she just said, I want you to design the gardens how Josh would design it. She said, we trust you, we support you, do what you think needs to be done. And as soon as she said that to me, I was just like, okay. I was like, okay. And you know, get a little, like, almost emotional thinking about it right now. But as soon as she said that, and just, they just do what you need to do. I said, okay. I said, well, what the center needs to be? What does the community need? I said, what do I want to do? What are my goals? What is everyone else's goals? So that's how I thought about, and that's how I've been starting to plan the gardens, doing market garden rows. So hey, we had to start seeds. Let's do a greenhouse. Now we have 2 greenhouses. I'm like, we got to do chickens. Let's raise chickens. People want to raise chickens. The food forest garden, the indigenous foods. We want fruit. We want to feed the community. So let's start an orchard. And then the peach project, we call it, where we're working with, her name's Reagan White Salusi. She works for the Utah State Extension Office in Blanding. She's done her research and finding these sought after seeds that our ancestors used to grow back in the day. And then through the scorched earth policy with Kit Carson back in 1868 was when the long walk happened, when they killed our animals, burned our crops, and cut down our trees. And prior to that, there was thousands of fruit trees in the Southwest, but they were all cut down because the best way to attack a people is attack their food source. So that's what happened. So um, going back to the peach, we through TikTok we linked up, and she gave me 2 big boxes of these seeds that are genetically pure, and she was given to by elders in the communities through Chinle Canyon de Chelly, Del Muerto area.
Hmm.
These families that kept these seeds hidden from the government. Um, she got those seeds and she started an orchard in Utah State, in Logan, Utah. And with all the seeds she gave us, that's when we made all the jam. And I think you guys had some of the jam.
Hmm.
And those seeds we're going to be starting a big orchard on site. We have 1,700 acres. So there's way back country that's inaccessible. There's only one way in and out, and it's fenced off. Back there is where I will establish this old world peach orchard, keep it secluded and protected from everything else, and that we're going to try to become a place to start bringing back that old peach variety. So that's kind of another big garden project that just happened out of the blue. But everything I plan, I present it to our meetings, but I've never heard no. It's just, what do you need? How can we help? And when you have support like that, I've never had support like that, like from just a whole organization. Like at my old job, my boss was very supportive, but like higher ups at the university, no was their favorite word to use with no justification. So, but here it's different, and I get to plan the perfect garden for at least what I would think, what the community would like to see. um, how I imagine when I close my eyes, like I imagine people coming after work to the center and just parking, coming on in, and just see a little map, and they can stroll the gardens, walk through the food gardens, the botanical garden, sit by the koi pond, go into the cove, maybe forage, eat some parsley. That's what I really see the center, or even at the sheep corral, you can see the churro sheep on the other side of the road, chickens out there. That's what I see that the center can be. So that's how I start planning the garden around it. But yeah, I've pretty much had all 100% creative control for how to design the garden. And yeah.
That sounds so nice. Like right now, I work with a grant in the community, and all the community members are very like the people who show up to the meetings and listen to what we're about. They're like, "Oh yes, this is wonderful. This is great work you're doing." But when we get to the chapter house, there's certain people in office, and in the offices, they're like, no, we're just gonna take forever to process your paperwork." And it's like, it's so nice to have someone say, "Yeah, go ahead, do what you need to do to improve the community."
Yeah. So what's great? So this nonprofit, we're on private land, so we can do whatever we want. But I know when I was working for the university, I wanted to create an orchard, big gardens at the university, and yeah, it was supportive. But once it came down to like proposing your plan, a budget to the higher ups, it was just no, it's not in the budget, and that's it. And it was frustrating. And I know other people try to work, like other gardeners I've talked to, like they work in their communities or anything going to reservation. It's just everyone's so frustrated. No one really has much faith in their government, the big government or even local chapters. Someone's always complaining about chapter officials. um, and I think we're all met with a lot of that. But again, at the center, it's a nonprofit on private land, and we we do whatever we want, and we have our water rights on site. We have wells, and we can drill more if we wanted to, because we're grandfathered in. We were established before all these laws are put in place, so we have no restrictions on our water use. That doesn't mean we're gonna like flood irrigate, but our goal is to harvest as much rainwater as we can, and just lessen our reliance on our groundwater. um, but yeah, it's just it's amazing. I just love my job and all the support. but it's demanding, and I'm nervous for this upcoming growing season because this is our debut year of our gardens, of our chickens, of our sheep. We will have issues, as with any first run. So I'm like, I don't want to beat myself too much over it, but we're preparing as much as we can for this whole season. Because once March happens, we'll be growing nonstop, probably all the way till Thanksgiving.
That sounds pretty cool. I'm so excited for you. It sounds like you have all the support and you need to just create your vision. Going back to talking about the Navajo Nation, like in your expertise and opinion, what do you think the Navajo Nation has to do in order to be fully self-sustaining in regards to like food sovereignty?
So I kind of almost covered it, but I was talking about earlier how we need to establish our own food system. There was it's the DPI Institute. It was the Diné Policy Institute. The lighting's just harsh here. I'm trying to get situated. The Diné Policy Institute. They did a food sovereignty study back in 2014 or 15, but they surveyed a small area, wheat fields, Fort Defiance, I think towards Round Rock, like 5 chapter areas, and a lot of data information in there talking about, like on average, people drive on average like 53 miles one way for food. More than half of the people shop off the reservation for groceries. Um, like a third of people go every week, once a week. Another third go once every 2 weeks, and then there was like 18% that go once a month. So you think about, like, man, that's a lot of traveling. And so people that live in the most remotest parts, like they're like 130 miles, 122 miles one way, and those are the people that live like, gosh, like Rough Rock, mini farm, man. It's a long ways just for fresh fruits and vegetables. Everyone needs to eat, and there's three things you need in life: food, shelter, and security. So if you can at least have all three, you'll be set. um with talking about food, our we really need to again establish our own food system, start growing locally. um we have nappy, but they grow alfalfa, they grow grains and stuff for cattle. I was like, what about us? I always foresaw, big greenhouses growing more crops to feed our community, but everything is most of it is shipped in from like South America. We could be growing it here, but we need to establish our own food system, get our own growing operation going. I knew this when I read that report. I think I read it in like 2016, and that's kind of what drove me to start combating food insecurity and focus on food sovereignty. It's going to be my choice what I want to eat, what I want to grow, and it's up to us. Um, a lot of people say we need to do this, we need to do it. What I'm saying, but they're relying on the government. They want someone else to do it, and you think our government would say, "Yeah, we need to do this," but it's not a priority right now. I know it's a priority. A lot of people are realizing how big of a priority it is, but I feel with the tribe, there's there. I wish there was more support, but there's not really. So my um my thinking is, in order to get the tribe on board, you're gonna have to do it yourself first, and then you're gonna have to see the results of what's happening. Because I can talk all day and day about soil, health, water, rainwater, but it falls on deaf ears. I feel it doesn't care. It doesn't. I think it doesn't get votes, to be honest. But in order for us to do it, it's gonna have to be us, you, me, yourself, then your family, your neighbors, your community, your chapter. You just got your region, your agency. It starts with us. And I think if we can all start making these little changes and start growing food, and I think there'll be a turn, and we'll start getting more support, because the tribe has a lot of money. um, but where is it going to go? um, like with NHA housing, they had to send back tens of millions of dollars to the government because it wasn't spent. There's money for agriculture out here, but it's just, how do we get that money, and how can we get the support to access those kind of funds to help us? Right now, there's the Navajo AGI, a grant. It's like $500 a year. It's open right now, applications, but it's anything helps. But in order to really combat what we need as like hundreds of thousands of us out here, we're gonna have to develop our own regional food system. As it stands, there's no rules, regulations in place. We just abide by federal guidelines across the board. So I hear questions like, why can't grandma sell her sheep to TNR or something? Why can't they butcher and sell? It's because it's against the law. Because by federal guidelines, the sale of meat, slaughter has to be done in a approved facility, USDA slaughter facility. None of that exists out here. I think the closest is in Colorado or Santa Rosa. There's our Phoenix maybe, but we need to establish our own food guidelines, our own, because we know what we need, but there's nothing there. It's just all reliant on what's federal law. And that's kind of the issue a lot of people deal with, not only for gardening, but anything as well. Our sovereignty, it's what we have, it's what we utilize, but it's kind of almost hurting us a little bit at the same time. So I think we need to just start changing things. And I can talk on and on about this. I don't want to keep going, but I think you kind of get my feelings, my frustrations with things are. But I think that's what our tribe needs to do. Just establish our own food system, become a regional food hub. Instead of growing acres of alfalfa, let's grow market crops and sell to all these other communities, sell to Albuquerque, sell to the schools. What's stopping us? It's for me, it's just common sense, but that's just what I think.
Yeah, for sure. I always feel like it's like the first penguin effect of like you got to jump into the water first to see
Mhm.
if you get eaten by a seal, and if you don't get eaten and you survive, then everyone else will jump in.
I agree. Absolutely, it's a good metaphor.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. I feel like me and Adrian talk about like this with like the school system all the time. It's like we say we're sovereign. Why don't we just put our foot down and make rules for better schools, for better education, to create curriculums that are focused on Navajo culture and Navajo systems and learning, but they just don't because that requires work. And it could be the same
I
for farm it like that the same issue like applies to so many different like things that we could be doing as a sovereign nation is like you just got to do the work and change the system and allow the system to change.
and yeah, and we can say change the system all day, but there's people put in place. If we change the system, they lose their jobs. They would basically be changing the system, working themselves out of the job. So I think that's why I ask I always gripe about government or way things are run with my friends, my parents, people that live off the reservation, on the reservation. We all have an opinion of how things are. Change is what needs to happen, but there's people, it's just job security. Like my sister she started a business, but she said there's like 12 steps, ridiculous steps. She said it could be whittled down to 3 steps. Why is there 12? There's so many hurdles put in place with the way things are, and we need reformation to change that. And again, we're sovereign. You'd think we could change it, but it's work. And who wants to put in the work? We are, me gardening, your podcast, getting information, sharing information. It all starts with us. And like I love TikTok because I get to see all these other people doing what they're doing, not only in the Navajo reservation, but in their communities, combating their food sovereignty, bringing back their language. It's wonderful, and I love social media for that, to connect to all these wonderful people. That's how I met you,
Yeah.
through TikTok at the fair, and that's so it's information's very key. I think once we can, like I said, get the ball rolling, it's going to be a snowball effect, and we can start getting support. But I I could say so much more about something else, but I'll save that for off camera.
I guess that might go into our last question of like I saw on your TikTok, I don't know like if it's called Reels or Library, but your videos, one of your videos was taken down and you mentioned something about talking about corruption on the Navajo Nation.
Yeah.
Did
Oh
you
gosh, yeah. I was ranting. I was just frustrated. But yeah, it just kind of corruption, the big buzzword. It's out there. It has been, it always will be. It's just how can we minimize it and um just lessen it. Um like so much money comes, you have no idea how much money comes into the tribe, just hundreds of millions. And where does that money go? And like you drive around, it's like, hey, we got 80 million for roads, but then like I there's like potholes as deep as a bucket out here. I'm just like, where's all this money going? And like housing, like the biggest frustration, like I busted a vessel in my head was when the tribe had to give back. It was like $88 million back to the federal government because NHA didn't spend it. Meanwhile, there's people waiting on housing, there's boarded up housing, roof needs repair, and like, how can you spend all this money and not spend it? And I think my dad, he said, that's the issue right there. If we spend it, we don't have it anymore. So they hold on to it and they're really stingy with it. Almost act like it's their money. And their whole reason why you have it is to spend it. Like I was on student senate for a stint at Navajo Tech, and we sat on like over six figures of student activity funds. And every semester they every student's charged an activity fee, and it was just banking over the years. But Senate, with they weren't spending it; they were just holding on to it. And I'm like, why are we holding on to it? Like, let's spend it. Oh, but if we spend it, it's gone, and everyone's all careful about it. I'm like, no, that's what it's for. We get more next year. That's what you budget for. So that was just at tribal college government. Then you think about the whole in Navajo government, it's worse. And it's just, as a resident that's lived here, lived off, it's very frustrating to see. Um, People want to move back and improve things, but it's trying to change the ways things have always been this way. When you want to change, you're going to have a lot of pushback and friction from it. So it's just, they say, oh, it's better just to leave things the way they are. Oh, things have always been done this way. But we we either adapt or die, and we're slowly adapting at a snail's pace. It takes forever to get anything done on the reservation. But as frustrating as all these things are, hey, I'm here. I love it here. I'm building my forever home, have my family, my garden. But yeah, a lot of people I talk to, I've never heard any. Well, majority are negative criticisms of our government, and everyone always has an opinion. And when I was talking about kind of what I'm talking to you about now, about nepotism, about trips that these people take, like at NTU, for instance, I'm gonna throw them on their bus a little bit. Some instructors could even get dry erase markers for their classrooms. It's no money or no funding, or they just can't get anything. I had an instructor, she had a leak in her office for 2 years and nothing was done about it. It's just falls on deaf ears. It's like, why aren't little things like that being done? But yet you hear directors going to dinner, going to Top Golf, once a month. It's like, what the frick? I'm just like, what's going on here? And did I take crazy pills? And that's why a lot of people have been leaving in droves from NTU. I left because of what's going on, and that's just the university, but it's happening large scale with our government. And you have people coming back to try to change the system, but they can't. It's almost impossible. There's so much pushback. Then you end up quitting, leaving, or they just lay down and become just like everyone else, and just, it is what it is. So that was kind of what I was talking about, and I think I was narrowing down was it a chapter person? That's when bam, got cut off, and it was bullying. I was stricken for a week with bullying because I was throwing someone under the not throwing under the bus, but not exposing, but
Calling
talking
them
about.
out.
Yes, that's the word, calling them out. And then someone said that the lady was like related and didn't like it, and that was the one I got reported for bullying and harassment, and that's when I got banned. So it wasn't a video I posted; it was a live I got banned from. And with stuff like that, though, you have to be very careful with what you say and what you can and can't say or show. But then you have people getting away with more things. Like I had a video talking about butchering a turkey for Easter, and I didn't show any dead animal. I did it respectfully. I just talked about the process and respect for the animal. I got banned for cruelty against animals, and yet you have all of TikTok showing their slaughtered birds, stuffing it, dicing it up and stuff. And I just talked about it, and I got banned. So I'm just like, it's like you got to really step on eggshells with what you show and talk about, because I feel some creators we're under the microscope more so than other creators. And I think, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here. So the topic was tribal government, but that's what I feel about the government. We have a new president, Boo Nagrin. All I know was he was a Mr. Navajo. No, when he was Men of the Navajo. And someone was like, "Who are you voting for?" And they told me he was in the calendar, and they showed me his photo. I'm like, "Ooh, he's got my vote." And they're like, "Don't you care about his policies?" I'm like, "I'm sure he has good policies." But
I think he's a doctorate in something. Adrian's
uh,
the one who would know politics, and
oh,
her
okay,
knowing about all of the the politicians and everyone running. That was her game
uh-huh.
show.
Yeah, and like for me, I will okay, so it's just me in my opinion. COVID was awful, but I'm so glad the restrictions were finally lifted. But I felt like they were just left in place and nothing was being done. Like at the university, the gas stations, we still had the mask mandates, whereas New Mexico was gone with it for a while. So that for me, that really frustrated me. And I'm like, we're all vaccinated and I had my boosters, mask, I wash my hands, but I'm just like, why do we still have to keep abiding by these? I was like, when are we gonna get back to just normal way of life? And I think now it's finally getting back to that way. Um, I still respect people, still respect for people that still mask up and whatnot. For me, I was so fatigued and I was just kind of tired and done with it. So Boo Nagrin, he lifted it recently, but beyond that, I don't know. I really don't know what his platform is. Um, I'm sure it's positive, but I literally voted for him because he was in the Men of the Navajo.
Yeah, like it was kind of like like I don't know if they announced it on KTNN or sent out a notice or memo to everyone. I just kind of saw it on a Facebook post and shared it to my community's Facebook page because that's the only way we get really any information is our Facebook page. And like even someone like going to the store, they still had like, oh, you need your mask. And I think even our post office, they still have theirs. It's been like a month since the mask mandate's been revoked, but it feels like it's like kind of like slowly trickling out where people are like, oh yeah, you don't have to wear a mask.
It's like it's well, it's I haven't worn one in a while. If I have to, I will, but I'm just kind of like it's been almost 3 years, and it's I'm not like trying to be, is it facetious the word, but it was a crazy time 2020 and it's 2023, and I just want to keep looking forward. And it was not dark, but it was, everyone has their own COVID story, every family. Ours, it was insane here as well, losing family members, friends. Like, gosh, I remember bowling. My parents bowled with a lot of people, and like a whole family succumbed to it. The father first, and the mother. No, the daughter first, and the father, and the mother. So it's like I don't want to be insensitive to the losses that happened, but I think it's been 3 years. I think we can finally adjust and start talking with one another, having these community events, and like the fairs happen. I was so happy at Tuba City Fair, like seeing so many people because we were stuck in homes forever. I remember coming home and like my parents spraying me with Lysol. I'm like, that fear was insane. And I remember going to Albuquerque, like when the roadblocks were happening, and I was just like, for me, I learned a lot about my constitutional rights during lockdown. So when these roadblocks were happening, it started had me going like, are these even constitutional? Can the tribe even do this? Like this is in violation. Like you can't really hinder the movement of citizens freely like that. And a lot of people just said, don't do it. Just listen to what you're gonna do. Just listen to them. They know best. I kind of learned like you don't you should you if you have your rights you need to use them. You don't use them, you lose them. So just things like that, and kind of talking about the like when I was thinking about the corruption, how I'm not saying they're corrupt, but what what can the government tell me, can and can't tell me what to do, what am I legally allowed to do. And because we're a sovereign nation, that's another gray area that we have to talk about. So you got to answer, is this legal? And some people just don't want to cause a stir or be contentious, so they just take it. And I was kind of like that, just listening. But through pandemic, I learned a lot about myself, and my rights. So I feel more better. So if I were to be stopped or detained illegally, I can at least defend myself and know what I should say, what I shouldn't say, and what's basically what the law can or can't do to me. That's very, very, very powerful tool to have. Um, Again, if you don't use your rights, you lose them.
Yeah, for sure. So that's kind of like the end of my questions. I think we kind of run to the end of the topics too. It's been like an hour and a half of
Yeah.
talking.
No worries, no worries.
So is there anything else you want to like talk about or shout out? This video will be coming out maybe the second half of March.
Okay.
So there's any events around there, or I think you said in
Okay.
April you had
Yeah.
something?
So at the Hajon Center, April 1st, April Fools is the first Saturday of the month. I'm going to be running a seed starting and probably soil health workshop at the Hajon Center. Um, we have a website, www.hajoncenter.org, and we're in the process. It should be updated by then, but you can find information there. And then I'll convey that information through the Hajon Center TikTok and my personal High Desert Gardener TikTok account. But I look forward to hoping that this is gonna be a great and fortuitous year for the center, for growing food, for raising animals. I'm optimistic. I do a thing where I'm optimistic in the spring, and then in like December, I'll be like, well, I don't know if I can cuss on him. Ah, shit, like what went wrong, what went right, and what can I improve? So, I'm all optimistic and sunshine right now, but December, I might just be like, just over it, just over the growing season. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of it. But yeah, thank you for having me as a guest on your show.
So thank you so much for coming back on. We hope to like meet up again sometime, hopefully. Maybe I'll
Yeah,
check out one of your
yeah.
workshops.
Are you in Cameron right now then?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then Adrian, she's on travel somewhere.
She's in
She's
yeah, she's
she
on
said she's
travel
at
right
work.
now. All right, everyone, thank you. That was Navajo Tea Time, part two of the Josh Toddy interview. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Remember, our goal for this year is to get to 1,000 subscribers. Thanks. Bye.
Pulling over cars.
If you got to slap a senator, you slap a senator. Incorporating language and cultural aspects into. Who's your celebrity crush? Pass. It's at a point where you're just like, what am I